All right, guys, the day is finally here. This arrived rather quickly. If you know, you know. I've been waiting for it for about a week now, but it is finally here from a US seller, a US vendor, and we're about to get into it. Here is the Storm Arena Sagat. I'm really excited. We're about to do an unboxing, quick unboxing, and a full review of the figure. And I want to apologize, I'm getting over being sick, so in this video I do have a cough drop that I'm sucking on. I have a little bit of sniffles, so again I apologize for the audio. Hopefully it's not too bad, but let's go ahead and get into the video. Guys, here he is in all his beauty. Check it out, guys. Wow, this is a big beefy package. As you can see, he's a big dude. I love the poses on the back side of the packaging there. Looks fantastic. Now, I did want to point out, I did get this from a US seller, and you can see it's the Alpha 3 version. This is not the 03 version, so somehow, some way, this seller got me a shipment from the US distribution. So you know we're going to be taking a close look at that chest there to make sure that there's no discoloration, because as many people have said, Storm should have taken care of that problem on the releases coming to the US. So I know if you got it from Big Bad Toy Store, you're probably waiting. I'm still waiting on my pre-orders from Big Bad Toy Store, but I was able to get my hands on this one a little bit early. So let's go ahead and break them open, guys. You can see he's sealed there. Do a quick unboxing, quick review, and then we're gonna get into the comparison. So he's looking, oop. First off, I wanna say I hate these stands. Get rid of those stands. I really don't need that. Here he is in the plastic, trying to watch that glare there. Looking good. You know, the chest is looking pretty good. I'm going to have to take a closer look once it's out of the package, but they might have fixed that problem for the US release like they're saying. I don't know. Again, I've been hearing from multiple people that in person it's hard to tell, and it is kind of hard to tell for me looking here, but on camera is where you can usually see the difference of color there. So it's hard to tell in the package, but let's go ahead and bust him open here. He's a big dude. Oh yeah, he looks really good. He's looking really nice. He's big, he's hefty. He's got a little bit of weight to him. This ankle's a little crooked there. You know, he feels a little, maybe slightly stiff out of the package, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but we're gonna go ahead and look at the chest, right? That's what a lot of people have been talking about, the discoloration in the chest, and that it should be fixed for these US releases. And looking at him from my blind eye, it's looking good. Like, it doesn't look as discolored as it did in the photography and in videos. So we might be in luck here. They might have actually fixed it for the US release. You tell me on video, are you seeing that chest discoloration or not? Again, I've seen other reviewers do the exact same thing where they're like, it looks good to me in person, but afterwards on camera you can really see the difference there. Let's adjust the lighting. Maybe we have some bright lighting on it, so let's see. Still looking good, to be honest. That's great news. I was really worried about the releases that were coming out in the US, that they might be suffering from the same problem. And if it is there, it's only slight, definitely not as bad as some of the others I had seen where it's straight up like green. So yeah, that's a positive. Let's bring our lights back up just a little bit there. And there he is. Looking good. You know, the sculpt is great, as we know. If you watched my previous comparison video, that's the thing that I'm not going to disagree on. Like, the sculpt is really, really nice. You have all the veins in the arm, you have a lot of definition in the muscle, the wraps in the hands, just the detail in the folding is really, really nice. You know, I can't really complain about this sculpt at all. The head looks really nice. If you saw my last video, you know I love this neck piece. Really, really cool. You know, in his standard position, just like this, I gotta say, he looks great. And I wasn't sure if he had a soft, so he does it. So this piece is soft. It's interesting. So it's like, it almost has like a hard interior, it seems like. Yeah, you can see that. So there's a hard interior with a soft overlay on it, which does get out of the way when you're posing, so that's nice, right? Like, You can get the leg back there really nice. Again, you can see these drop hips, which I don't love, but overall, aesthetically, really great. I mean, super, super awesome as far as the sculpt and aesthetics go. He's looking fantastic. Let's look at his accessories. Doesn't come with a ton of accessories. He comes with a second pair of hands, which are these claw hands. They have a really nice wash on the paint. Super detailed sculpt on these. I'm really, really liking them. Really nice. We'll put that on him here in a second when we do some poses. Let's look at his secondary head. So the neutral head is sort of the stoic Sagat pose there, which is nice. But of course, when you're doing your posing and you're getting him in action poses, you want that nice angry look to him. I'm really happy to see that. Here is his effect piece. So he doesn't come with the tiger fireball, but he does come with this tiger flame kick, and it's nice. Like, it's hard. I kind of thought this would be like a soft plastic, but it's actually more of a hard plastic. The translucent is really nice. The paint gradient is really cool. I hear that it's kind of hard to get his foot in there, but when we do our posing test, we will go ahead and check that out. But yeah, this is looking cool. I really like it. And again, we have one of these plastic stand. I honestly hate these stands. Like, get rid of those stands. Give me an extra pair of hands. Use that plastic for almost anything else other than those stands. Like, if you know, those stands are awful. So, all right, let's go ahead and move on to the next part of our review, which is going to be our articulation test. If you saw my previous video comparing the photos that were released early on Reddit, you will know that I do have some gripes about the articulation of this figure. And you know, they are small gripes, they are nitpicky, but they are gripes that are going to affect his posability, his playability. And if you are a collector that is into, you know, dynamic posing and you want as much articulation as possible, we're going to get into why this one may be not as great, but we'll get into that here in just a sec, and then we're going to do our comparisons and you can make that call for yourself. But overall, so far, really, really awesome figure. So let's go ahead and start testing his articulation. All right, so getting into our articulation test here, he has nice head movement there. He's on I think a barbell peg there. He can look up that much, which is decent, not fantastic, but he can look down that much, which again is decent, nothing crazy, but still nice for a figure of this, you know, price point and caliber. Like, you can't expect him to have super high-end import articulation, but that is sort of what Storm is marketing, that these are like super high-end collectibles at a lower price, where in the sculpt and everything and the finish, I have to agree, but I think the articulation points on here fall a little bit short. But let's go ahead and test his arm. So this is one that I wasn't super happy to see on online reviews. You know, he has those big bulky shoulders where he can get to a nice 90-degree T-pose there, which is nice, but that's pretty much where it maxes out. You can get a little bit more with that butterfly, so that's cool. You know, you gotta have to kind of move around the soft chest piece. It kind of can get in the way for some stuff like this, but he can get above 90 actually, which is nice. In other reviews, it looked like he was kind of stuck at 90, but again, that is also using the butterfly joint. So let's not use the butterflies, but he gets just slightly over 90, really nice. All right, he has a bicep swivel, which is nice. The bicep swivel is good. Let's see if we can get a 360 on his shoulders. Again, that's nice. Everything feels solid. Now we're getting on to something that I was again curious about, is his double jointed biceps. So with the double jointed biceps, you really want to get like maximum curl here, which you can get just kind of a bit over 90. The large bicep there really gets in the way. So unfortunately, you can't really, like, if you wanted to get him in like a boxing pose, you can get him there, but you're not gonna get like really, really tucked in arms. That's it maxed out right there. There you can see the joint. So good, but not fantastic. That is one piece that I was a little sad about, but now we're gonna get into a piece that you've seen in multiple reviews. You've seen how they adjusted the ab crunch here, the joint that usually goes and extends upwards, that really allows their figures, especially the Ken and Ryu, to crunch forward and go back from that ab crunch a lot. Now, here's the test. I have not done this yet, but I will say from the photos and the examples I've seen, his ab crunch can be very limited. So again, we're not going to cheat from the hips. Ooh, yeah, that is tight, guys. So from that top ab crunch, you get this much. Let me move his arms out of the way. So you get that much from the top ab crunch, which isn't much at all. And then the bottom is where we really have the problem. That's max right there. So I can push it further, but it's not really moving much. So I can get a little more from that top. That's starting to cheat from the waist. So that's about max, but you know, that's with the neck and stuff too. So straighten his neck. There you go. That's how he looks in his full ab crunch, which one of the biggest detractors from this figure is his inability to really get low in that crunch, because if you're doing any kind of posing, if you're doing dynamic posing, if you're trying to get him to hit all of those in-game poses that he does, the limitation here on this ab joint is really going to hinder how dynamic you can make those poses look. So now let's do the top ab crunch back. And this is actually probably even worse. That's as far back as he goes there. Now we're going to use the bottom piece. And that's pretty much his max extension going back from the ab crunch. What's nice is the scar and all the sculpting continues up underneath the soft piece here. His muscles are all looking really good, but that is a disappointment. I can't lie. Like, you know, a figure that's kind of marketed as a high-end collectible, highly articulated, you definitely want to see more articulation in the ab, since the ab is such like a vital point of articulation for dynamic posing. You want to see more than this, to be honest. So that is a bit of a bummer. And since we're here, since I know you guys want to see it, let's push it a little further. Again, we don't want to cheat. Oh, you can see it starting to come up there. And there it goes. There's that ab crunch. So if you really try to push it any further than kind of what we were showing there, it wants to pop off. Let's put him back. Come on. That didn't really pop. I don't know if it, there we go. Okay, it's back in all the way. So there we go. All right, so now let's go ahead and look at, first he has waist swivel, which is nice. He can freely move on that ball peg. Really no or very little side to side from that top piece. You can see that there. He does have a swivel on that ball peg, which is nice. About right there. I don't want to push it much more from there. It looks like it might start to pop off, but that's a decent amount there. So overall, pretty decent, but that ab crunch is killing me. Like, that honestly is kind of a shame, because the ab is so vital in getting him into really cool poses. So that is a bummer, but now we're going to touch on something that, again, I covered in my other video, and that is the leg articulation from the hips. In my other figures from Storm Arena, I've ran into this problem as well, and what we're going to do here is see our max extension forward from like a front kick with keeping the leg straight. And boom, you're hitting it about right there. So that is 90 or close to 90. It might be just shy of 90, but no, I'll count that as 90. You can see that that's about as much as he's going to extend just forward there, which is what I was talking about in my other video. Is the leg range on these Storm Arena characters is not great, especially compared to other figures like Jada or SH Figuarts. This is actually pretty limited compared to those. Now he has his double knee, which is decent, but again, with the double knee joint, you kind of want to see some better range of extension, and you know, you want to see that be able to come up, but that's it maxed out because of the shorts and the calf design there, which again is kind of a bummer, because you want this guy to hit tiger knees, right? That's what it's all about. And without cheating, without kind of messing with anything else, that's kind of his default tiger knee pose, guys, which isn't the best. Now, as I was mentioned in my other video, and a lot of people didn't really understand what I was talking about when I say the legs need to sort of kick outwards to get past 90. So what I mean by that, just to show you here clearly, is, so that's him with his legs straight at about 90. So to get past 90, the test is I want to get him to kick to the height of his head. I want to get his foot to kick up to his head level, and I'm going to push it, and there is what I'm talking about. So to get him to head level, not even really quite head level, his leg needs to come out that far. So that's what I was talking about with the leg articulation in my previous video. A lot of people weren't really understanding what I was talking about, but this is a prime example of it right here. And it's something that I noticed in my previous Storm Arena figures that I was curious if they would fix for this one. But to be honest, I think it's actually worse in the Sagat than the previous ones. You might say, well, what about the drop hip? First of all, that drop hip looks awful. Do not like drop hips, as you all know. Not great. Look at that gap there. So even with using that drop hip, we're going to run this test again. Boom. Right there, he's maxed out. Just slightly over 90 degrees there with that drop hip. So again, we want him to kick up to head level. Here we go. Pushing up, pushing up, pushing up. About right there. And that's not even really head level. We need, like, that's what I'm talking about. Not great kicking range. Now, one thing I will give Jada, and let's put this back in there. I don't like to use the drop hip, is the butt design here is a little better, where you can get a nice kind of kick back, but then you are dealing with that really nasty gap from the joint there. So this actually kicks back slightly better than the Jada figures. Splits, really nice, really no problem there. His leg kicking outward, as we were showing, really doesn't have a problem. And it's going to be the same on both sides here. There you go. So again, if you're wanting to get his knee, say, up to his chest, right? So that ab crunch isn't giving you much. But if you want that knee up to his chest, it's like dang near impossible, honestly. Like you're gonna, oh, did not mean to do that. I was just pushing that joint too far there because his ab crunch is so limited. Like, you gotta kick outwards. And you know, this might not be a problem to some people. Some people were like talking about they don't care, but I mean, it's Sagat, guys. Sagat's one of my favorite characters. And he has to do the tiger knee. Like the tiger knee is what he's all about. So you can get it there, but that's about it. There it is. But it is a little left to be desired, if I'm being honest. Okay. Let's get down to, he has the swivel here on his shin, his ankle. He has, ooh, this one's a little funky. What is that? Ooh, I gotta be careful. That feels something misaligned. I felt like I was gonna break it there for a sec. Something's off here. I may just have to mess with that. But do you guys see that? That's kind of how it's sitting normally. I don't want to force it anymore. I might be able to get that joint to, we'll see if I can get that fixed. But anyways, so he's got ankle swivel. He's on a ball hinge joint there, which he actually really doesn't have any ankle rock, which is surprising, actually. Like, that's either very stiff or just doesn't have an ankle rock, which is surprising. He can go down like that fully. That's as far up as he can go, which is not fantastic. But he does have the toes. Toes are nice. I gotta say it because everyone else does when they're talking about articulation. Like, do we need the big pin there? Everything else is pinless but the toes. I prefer that to not be there. But overall, pretty good. You know, overall, I'm not going to return it. I'm not going to say it's a bad figure or anything like that, but as you can see, fairly limited in his articulation, especially in the abdomen and the waist and the legs and the hips, which is a good amount of the articulation, especially with a character like this where he needs to get into those like Muay Thai poses. Like you can get him there, but it's just like not as great. So we'll see that in the comparison coming up. Overall, really nice figure. I'm happy with him. He looks great. He looks fantastic. He's gonna look awesome on the shelf. But let's go ahead and look at his other head and hands. There he is. That's the one right there. That is a really cool head sculpt. Now in my Storm Arena Ryu and Ken, I hated the soft hands. You got soft hands, boy, because when you're posing, when you're playing with the figure, they just would pop off so easy. Like I couldn't keep the hands on my Storm Arena Ryu, and it was really annoying. But these actually feel like a slightly harder plastic than the Ryu and Ken, which I like because I think that's going to keep these from falling off as easily. So here's a quick test. Look, if I did that with my Ryu and Ken, their hands are flying across the room. So I like that. They improved that in my opinion. The hand articulation, so he's on that sort of swivel hinge ball joint, so you can spin that around. You can get it about that far and that far, which is plenty. Not bad. Really good. Now let's look at his effect piece. I'm gonna have to use this foot because the other one's kind of janky until I figure out how to fix it. But I heard the word on the street is it's kind of hard to get this thing on. So let's see how fast. They say you gotta like, I've seen people's like, I feel like others had a better ankle rock than mine does. Maybe it was not the case. Let's see if this will fit in here, because it is a pretty tight squeeze. Okay, I'm gonna have to go off camera just to kind of fix this a little better. So this is not going too well. It's like you gotta get it to fit in there just right. And it's really not wanting to go in there how I need it to. I'm gonna have to mess with that later. I think it may be, I don't know what's wrong with the ankle rocking on mine. Like that's max and I'm afraid to push it anymore. Honestly, these ankles feel like a little fragile and I'm afraid to break that peg. So I'm gonna have to figure that out later, but that is not too great. Okay, well there we go. Overall, nice figure, articulation, quite a bit left to be desired, but there's a few other things I want to touch on with this figure, you know, in regards to like the drop pips and the soft chest. And we're going to do that in our comparison with Jada Sagat. So I originally planned to have the comparison at the end of this video, but this video is already long enough. So we're actually going to be doing the full comparison with Jada Sagat in a separate video. So please subscribe if you're interested in seeing that. There's a few more points that we didn't touch on in this review that I think need to be said. But, you know, overall, the Storm Sagat is a very solid figure. I think in its sculpt and its aesthetics and in its finish, it feels very premium, but there are a few things that I really am not liking when it comes to the engineering and the articulation and those sorts of details. When it comes to this figure, I think it actually falls rather short, and I'm a bit disappointed in sort of the gumminess of the joints. He doesn't move very well. The ankles on mine, like I was having tons of problems with the ankles straight out of the package. One was like completely misaligned. There was really no ankle rock. The chest and the arms and everything just felt honestly a little sticky and not as smooth and as premium as I would like it to feel. And honestly, especially when you compare it to the Jada Sagat, in the articulation and the smoothness of the engineering, I think it definitely falls short. And honestly, the Storm Arena Ken, I loved. Everything was great about that. The Ryu, I liked a little bit less than Ken. And unfortunately, Sagat, I think I like a little bit less than the other two. So we don't like to see that. I don't like to see that each release has gotten a little bit worse, honestly. That makes me slightly worried for the future of the Storm Arena Street Fighter stuff. So I just really have to be honest about that. And a lot of people I know were saying that I was being biased towards Jada in my last video, which I think is a little bit silly. You know, I think all the points I'm making here are objective points that come down to engineering and articulation. I didn't want to focus strictly on aesthetics because that is just a little too subjective. But, you know, again, this is my review. It is my opinion. And aesthetically and finish and look, I think this is a awesome figure. But when it comes to, you know, the other points of action figures, which is your articulation and your ability to pose and your ability to get him into like really screen accurate dynamic poses for your shelf, I think he actually falls rather short. But I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Let me know what you think down in the comments. I'm really interested to know how you guys feel about this. But I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank you for making it to the end of this video. And if you'd like this, if you like this sort of in-depth review of this figure, I'm going to have much more specifically for Street Fighter releases. So be sure to like, be sure to subscribe, and thank you for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.